Hi, my name is Jason Trask, and this is the seventh in a series of readings I've been doing from my memoir, The New Plantation, Lessons from Rikers Island, published by Deerbrook Editions, about my experiences as an English teacher of incarcerated high school students on Rikers Island in New York City. In the sixth reading, you saw me teach my first class to the students I had out there. And, all things considered, it went fairly well. But and that night I went home and I was like really happy. I was thinking how I figured out how to teach these kids because it went fairly well, and I just thought, okay, it's going to be okay. Well, then the next day I taught this class, and it was the worst class not only that I've ever taught, but anyone has ever taught. I mean, I just didn't know how to handle the situation, and I think it was a tough situation, but I wish I'd been able to handle it differently. And, I included this chapter in the memoir, and I'm reading it now. I think basically to embarrass myself. I don't know. There's something about being embarrassed that makes you feel alive. Anyway, so here it is. This is from the chapter that's called The Comfort Zone, and this is a short segment from it. Toward the end of the day, Beatty gave me a crack at another group of students. Once again, I went in there on my own. This time it was a class of about 6 students. They were all spread across the room, and it seemed that the energy was too diffuse. I greeted them, and once again, in 1-foot-high block letters, I wrote, "fuck," on the blackboard. One of the kids said, "Oh, he one of them cool motherfuckers." The speaker was a short Hispanic kid with blonde hair who was sitting near the center of the room. He laughed derisively, looking right at me. He laughed with everything but his eyes. The other students joined him. I chuckled, but he saw through it and kept laughing. His dead eyes made him look older. The kids in this school were supposedly between 16 and 18. This guy looked more like 25. I stood there watching them laugh at me. There was a chasm between us that I thought I would never be able to cross. The joy I'd felt last night now seemed stupid to me. One of them said, "White people sure be turning red when they're mad. Word up, that motherfucker is red. Look at him. Is you a white man or a red man?" "I'm a white man," I said. "But, we don't choose our race." "You a corny-ass motherfucker," one of them said. "You a dumb motherfucker," said another. The older student was now saying nothing. He was simply laughing, proud of what he'd started. He was looking at me as if to remind me that he was in charge of these students. They were all laughing, and I felt hopeless. It was now clear to me why this place went through so many teachers. I wondered why I didn't just leave. All of the kids were staring at me as if I were a piece of meat. I suspected that if the COs weren't out in the hall, I would literally be dead. I remembered the old Gurdjieffian woman's advice about sensing my body, and though it helped some, it also made me aware of the degree to which my body was vibrating with discomfort. For lack of anything better to do, I grabbed a chair, faced them, and sat down. "We got 'em under pressure now." "We got 'em under mad pressure." "Where you be staying at?" one of them asked me. Using the word staying rather than living always haunted me. The fact is, many of my students on Rikers did not live in a place. They stayed there, as in, we stayed in a motel. The word choice said it all. Nothing felt permanent in their worlds. Many of them had moved dozens of times since they were children. As a result, their lives had the feel of something temporary. And granted, life is temporary. But children from stable homes are shielded from that far longer than most of these kids were. I said, "I live in Brooklyn." "For real?" "Shit, he probably one of them Bensonhurst motherfuckers." That was a reference to the area of Brooklyn that developed a reputation as a racist neighborhood back in the 1980s when a young African-American by the name of Yusef Hawkins was murdered. "He'd probably be lynching motherfuckers and shit." "We're in Brooklyn." "Williamsburg." The older Hispanic guy asked me, "We're in Williamsburg." Beatty's advice about not telling them anything about where I lived came back to me. I ignored it. "Driggs Avenue," I said. "Where in Driggs?" just north of Metropolitan. I live south of there. I'll be seeing you, he said, smiling. When you getting out, I asked. The reason I asked was to engage him in conversation, but as soon as I started talking, I recognized they'd think I was asking out of fear. Sure enough, they all hooted. Several of them said some version of, "He under pressure." The older guy answered, "I don't know when I'll be getting out. They be laying more bodies up on me and shit, but they can't catch me because I'm too nice." He hissed the S for several seconds. "He don't know the code," one of them said. I understood him, I said. What'd he say? He said they keep charging him with more murders, but they can't catch him because he's too tricky. They laughed again, but this time it had less force. One of them said, "A body ain't a real body. It's a charge, any charge. We call it a body, but it's just any crime." "Shit, don't be telling him that," said the older guy. I said, "Well, basically I had it right, except you're not quite as tough as I thought." "You saying he a herb?" someone asked. I didn't say that. "He don't even know what a herb is," said the older guy. Another one asked, "You know what a herb is, mister?" I'd already figured out that a herb is someone who's weak. I'd read a New York Times article that claimed muggers called their victims Vicks. I took a stab at it. I said, "A herb's a Vic." "A Vic," one of them said, and they all laughed. "That's that old shit." "Vic," several of them repeated, as if it were the stupidest word ever. One of them asked, "You saying here?" He stopped and laughed and said, "A Vic?" "No, I just thought that when he said they'd be laying more bodies up on him, I thought he meant it literally. I'm glad that's not how he meant it." "Why are you glad about that?" asked the older guy. "Well, shit," I said. "If they were trying to lay more murders up on you, you'd be facing a lot of time, right?" "Yeah, so what's that to you?" "Well, I'd hate to see one of my students facing that kind of time." "Shit, I ain't one of your students. You ain't taught me shit." They all laughed and shouted, "Word up!" "But I'm going to," I said. They reverted to total laugh mode. This time I joined them. I said, "You won't even know about it until it's too late, because I'm one of them tricky mofos. And I'm going to teach you something about English." "What you going to teach me?" he asked. Then to the others he said, "No matter what he says, just laugh." They all began laughing. I cut through the laughter with, "Well, what's that word up there behind me?" They all laughed. "What's that word up there?" I asked. They all laughed. "Oh, I get it," I said. "You guys are afraid to say it because it's a bad word, right?" They saw through my bullshit and continued laughing. It seemed pointless. I sat there and waited. Finally, one of them said, "You don't got to teach me that word. I know that word," he said, feeling his crotch. "Yeah," I said, "I'm not surprised you know it, but what kind of word is it?" They all looked at me blankly. I waited. One of them said, "It's a swear." "Okay. Why is it considered a swear, yet intercourse is not considered a swear?" I went over to the board and wrote intercourse. The older guy saw a CO walk past the window. "I hate that motherfucker," he said. "Word up," said another. "I see that motherfucker out in the world, I'm putting a cap in his ass." This got them going off in 20 directions. At one point I said, "So why is fuck considered a swear?" They all ignored me and kept talking as though I didn't exist. The older guy grinned at me, reminding me again about who was in charge. I sat back down and listened. One of them was talking about a white captain who had a tattoo on his arm of a white baby holding a noose around a black baby's neck. "You ever seen it?" I asked. "No," one of them said. "But what's his shit? Who's that motherfucker out in Sprung 3? He's seen it." "Perez." Yeah, Perez in Sprung 3. He's seen it and he told us." "So why don't you report him?" I said. "You know, the guy with the tattoo." "Shit, don't nobody care about that kind of shit." "What are you talking about?" I said. "Of course they'd care. They were black correction officers, right? You don't think they'd care about it?" "Yeah, but he a captain." "I saw a black major the other day," I said. "Major?" "Well, yeah, he had an oak leaf cluster on his shirt, a round gold thing." "Oh, he mean a dep." "Okay," I said, "a dep. Seems to me that a dep must be higher than a captain, right?" "Well, yesterday I saw a black dep. Are you telling me that if he knew about this white captain's tattoo, he wouldn't care?" "Of course he'd care. You don't understand how it is out here on the rock. Y'all white people be running this motherfucker, and don't nobody care what some Negro be saying. It don't matter if he a dep or a dog. Don't nobody care." "Yeah, and besides, you can have any tattoo you want." "Yeah, that's that First Amendment shit." Right after that, one of the COs blew his whistle, and the kids went out in the hall and lined up. The only half-hopeful sign I received was that one of the kids stayed behind for a few seconds, allegedly to tie his shoe. When he got up, he walked over to me and shook my hand and said, "See you Monday, mister." I recognized it as an apology. A few minutes later, Beatty saw me come out in the hall. "Didn't look to me," he said, "like you got as much accomplished today as you did yesterday." "Yeah," I said, "I sure bombed that class." He grinned and said encouragingly, "The Rock is sort of like every place else. Sometimes you have a good day, sometimes you don't."